it's been wonderful to raise the love levels around Lovemore. But I had a little happy hippie thought the other day. I thought, wouldn't it be great to have little gauges like they have for the fire hazards and have them around Lismore, so we could show, you know, the changing love levels around the place. And as it comes into May in Lovemore, we could put it up to high or extreme even. Maybe not catastrophic, but anyway, that was a little thought I had. But I'm sort of here to firstly just try to link some of those Aquarian ideals, as I understood them, with possible political directions. So it's good to think about what was it about. If you can encapsulate in a few words what it was all about, as we understand it. Some of us weren't there. I wasn't quite there. I was just a little bit young and still in Newcastle. I think I was still in the moratorium movement and trying to do other things, but just missed out on the Aquarian Festival. But as I understood it, it was all about, of course, peace and love, and freedom and independence and empowerment and self-sufficiency, and seeking life in a new extended family, alternative ways of living. And it was all about, it was an inspiring time really, with you know, lots of great music, great fashions, lots of hairiness, and some people who had who were like really like pioneers in this region, pioneers, and some of them are here today, which is wonderful. Pioneers with really big ideas and ready to put them into action. And there was some moves towards, you know, getting new kind of little democratic models together, lots of meetings, and, you know, trialling new ways of decision making, like consensus decision making, which was a bit of a new thing here. And passive resistance movements that came out to, of course, to save Terrania and Mount Nardi a bit later, and some really great things. A lot of people just sort of, you know, standing up against the establishment, and other people just basically coming and dropping out. I was sort of one of those in about 1981. Dropped out for a while before I kind of got reintegrated into my local community and got motivated to go out and try and change things a little bit. So I'd just like to talk about how we might be able to link some of those ideals with political realities. And I'd like to talk about regionalism, regionalisation, which, and I'd like to broaden the focus from the Lismore, where the Aquarian bubbles sort of really started to blow up, to Lismore, where we've expanded to now, to the whole Northern Rivers, Bundjalung country. I'd really like us to just expand our scope and think of ourselves as a region. And I think this is happening naturally and organically anyway, especially in the last few years. There's been a really rapid movement, a really rapid consciousness of regionalism here, and it's really wonderful. There's been all sorts of things to move it along, and probably the latest and greatest thing of all was the threat of the CSG mining. I think nothing else has brought us together so quickly across the region, and we've managed to overcome a lot of our little parochial limitations, and we've put together various stereotypes have come together under the common cause. So we've got the greenies and the farmers, the nationals and the hippies, and everyone all sort of mixed up. You know, they're out there to save our land and water, which is a wonderful thing. And it's brought a real sense of unity, and of late, and hopefully for a while, a real sense of triumph, at least locally, and at least for a while. Things may change in the next little while, but so that's all really great. And a few years ago, I was involved in setting up an establishment called the Autonomous Regions Coalition. You see our little logo there. In 2006. At that time, it was still the Howard era. Things weren't so optimistic. You know, back in 2003, Howard was sending off the troops on the ships before there'd even been a parliamentary debate, and we were all out in the streets protesting against it, and we weren't feeling a great sense of democracy at that time. And there was other things that happened that really got me motivated. 2004, the last train came through Lismore. The state government took away the service, and a lot of us have been fighting ever since to try and get that train back, because It's taken away the only public transport we had. It's created a great disconnect between the towns for the carless people. And it's probably only served to increase the sort of parochial views and that, where people don't get to go to one town to the other and, you know, connect with that town. So it's very, very important we get that train back, and we're not fooled by any of these farcical reports that come out about $900 million to fix it and it's never going to happen. And it's really important that we get behind that still. So there's also other threats to our local democracy, like the threat of forced amalgamations of the councils. That's still looming. You know, the fact that councils still don't have any legitimacy of their own as a form of government as yet, but that may be set to change in this federal election, because I hear that they are supporting the idea of a referenda on the subject and to legitimise local government, and that's a very, very important thing. So I'll just check my notes here, see where I'm up to, and I've covered all that. It was just also, a lot of us talked about at the time in 2006 how wonderful it would be if we had the power to sort of raise our voice nationally as a region. And so when you've got situations like the incarceration of David Hicks in Guantanamo Bay, you know, and you're waiting on your foreign minister to make some statement about it, which is probably never going to happen. You know, we as a region can speak up, and we could say, we as a region, and we can put it to the vote, we can do it online, we can do it through ABC polls, whatever, but we gauge opinions here and we say, you know, that so many percent, 70%, whatever, want David Hicks freed. And we can go out and say that very loud and you know, be prepared to embarrass our federal governments. And we'll find things will move a lot quicker. There'll be a lot more progressive sort of movement around the place, I'm sure, if the regions can speak for themselves out there across the country and to the world. So I've told you about ARC. Well, ARC was formed to try and look at creating self-reliant and autonomous regions around the country, and starting here in the Northern Rivers. And we had all sorts of ideas. We mostly talked, we didn't do a real lot of action, and we kind of fell apart after about 18 months. Various people dropped out and one or two died, and then Kevin Rudd came in, and we all had a bit of hope that with the 2020 visions and all the summits and things that were happening, that things would certainly look up, and they kind of did for a while, although not a lot came of it in the end, I must say. We were talking about doing things like audits, where we could audit consumer habits across the region and try and match that up with what our production capabilities were for growing food and whatever, and processing, so that progressively we could become much more self-reliant as a region in food and in power, mostly, and look at how we could just produce power from renewable sources, and you know, establishing mini grids, that sort of thing, hybrid power systems, not relying so much on the major grid. But there were a whole lot of ideas we come up with, and so we championed the idea of autonomy. And autonomy is a really incredibly important thing. It's the antidote to the empire, you know, and if you see the empire bearing down on us in its various forms, as it has, we've had everything from, yeah, that's what when you Google empire bearing down, you get Ronald Reagan pulling faces. But the empire bearing down, whether it's taking contracts away from local contractors, or it's you know, threatening to sue because we don't want to have a McDonald's in Byron Bay or whatever else. There's many forms the empire takes. But what it does do is takes away a lot of our freedom and our ability to have a diversified culture. So I see autonomy is the antidote to empire. Autonomy stands for empowerment, freedom and independence, diversity and decentralisation. And I see that very much about what the Aquarius Festival was about. And at every level of society, from the individual to the nation, there's a certain level of autonomy that can be attained. And it's just a question of knowing what can be done at what level, whether it's the individual or a couple or a family or a neighbourhood or, you know, or a suburb, however it works, whatever level. Certain more things can be done at every level. So at a regional level, we can do a lot more. You know, we can pool resources councils can work together, share resources, share projects, share expertise, and be prepared to be a bit more entrepreneurial in things like, looking at railways, for example, getting a regional railway together, leasing the line from the state, There's lots of potential, but we've just got to see that we can do it and move in that direction. And over time we could make the states quite redundant, and that's the idea, because basically the mainland states of Australia are just too big and they're too centralised and they don't serve the regions very well. So we need to change that and start creating smaller regional units. So in realising greater regionalisation nationally, we would start to create a path towards lasting peace. And again, this peace thing comes up. It's in countries all around the world, whether it be Palestine or Kurdistan or Mindanao, or in the autonomous regions of Iran or the Basque region. There's lots of places in the world which have been hotspots for a long time. And really all they need is greater autonomy, and that's all they've ever wanted. And we really need to look through the course of this century, hopefully not too far away, having a summit and really trying to sort this stuff out, and we will get lasting peace that way. But there are limits at the moment to regionalism, what we can do as a region. Under the current constitution, only statehood can really deliver a political autonomy and sovereignty. So this is another option, okay? We can look at creating our own state up here. And it's not a new idea, it's got a long history. I'm just last in the line really of people up in the north here who thought, we've really got to do this, So new state would be well represented federally with senators elected. We'd have our own senators up here. We'd have the power to legislate. We could be a model to the world. We could make this bubble really work for us. If we say we wanted to be free of GM foods, for example, we could as a state legislate to do so. We could protect our borders from GM products coming through. And similarly, if we don't want CSG mining here, we can legislate so. I heard Martin Ferguson, the former Federal Minister for Resources, recently on the radio, or some months ago, saying it's the people of the state who own the resources collectively, and it's them who can decide on what is to be done with them. So as a state, and only as a state, we have the power to decide on what happens to our resources, and we can put a stop to CSG mining. There's good economic arguments as well. If we were a state, we'd receive a direct injection for funding via the GST. Northern New South Wales has been shortchanged on the GST since its inception. Sydney's got 63% of the state's population, but it receives 80% of the return on the GST. So that just shows you they're getting more than they really deserve, and we're getting consequently less. So if we had a bit more, we could spend it on infrastructure and whatever. It was estimated by Stephen Wellstead, who came before me proposing a new state, that there'd be between $1.4 and $2.4 billion annually injected into the area if we were a new state. So it would certainly allow our cash-strapped councils to invest in significant projects like getting the train back on track. The new state would encompass more diverse bioregions and allow for greater ability to be self-sufficient in food and power, and we could have large-scale production of hemp fibre and biofuels on the Western Plains. I probably won't go into the history. The history's up there, but it does start back in about 1840 with Governor Gipps saying, hey, wouldn't it be good to have a new colony up there above the Clarence? And then I think it was Dunmore Lang said, we're going to establish this place called Cook's Land, which was going to be Northern New South Wales and southeast Queensland. And it went on from there. In 1915, Sir Earl Page, who was later to be knighted, grandfather of Don Page, sitting member for Ballina, he got up in Grafton, very angry at the cancellation of a ferry service to Sydney, and proclaimed the establishment of the Northern New South Wales Separation League. And that was really the beginning of it all, from the people point of view, from people who lived here, as opposed to people planning from elsewhere. And that went on in the early 20s, 1923, they formed the Country Party out of a movement to basically create a new state up here. And it went on from there. 1948, I think it was the New England movement, New England state movement was formed, and in 53 they had referenda right across 21 councils in northern New South Wales, and there was, I think it was 76.9% or something support for creating a new state, and apparently that was the highest vote in referenda history to date. So there was a huge amount of support for the new state up here, and it all sort of went belly up in about 1967 when they had a referendum for the New England state, and it included Newcastle in the deal, and that was a mistake really, because even though they all thought they needed a good port, the population at the time, Newcastle was so great, and the opposition so great, there was only 25% support in Newcastle, whereas 75% across the board up the north. But they'd kind of fooled the local dairy farmers and said that if you support the new state, you would lose your milk quotas to Sydney, and so there was a lot of scaremongering went on and a lot of anti-state, new state propaganda, so it managed to sink that one, as it did the Republic some years later. So they're all up still for question, but that's my little history, and I just wanted to just finish off just talking about beyond a new state and regions, talking about what we really need is to overhaul the system. The political system's not working for us. You know, the party system it's failed us, and so we've got to really look at how we can create a new political system. And what we sort of were working out on was an idea of having this democracy from the bottom up, a real grassroots democracy, where there's kind of feeder roots right in the communities. So the land and communities were linked through each local council. So we have, in my locality, I live out Rosebank Way, we reverse privatised the paper at one stage, the Village Journal, and we'd created an umbrella group called Rosebank Community Inc. And then we tried to bring all the local groups together under that. So we had our own little Progress Association or Community Inc. And then the idea of that is in all these, right across the whole local government area, they feed into the local government and work with them. So we're becoming much more proactive, much more participatory democracy. And then we preserve the local government areas. They work together in clusters, as regional clusters, similar to what we've got with Noorock, only empowering Noorock all the more, having representatives, several representatives from each council, and seeing it as a new kind of regional government taking form there. And then what we'd like to do is get rid of the old Westminster system. This is looking from the top down. The federal Senate, the ministerial portfolios are awarded to the winning parties, three-tiered system of government, preferential voting system, separate voting for local, state and federal elections, the state Senate and eventually the states themselves. So it's a little bit radical, but we put in its place this greater community networking with local government, having all the land and communities represented, regular online referenda, simplified proportional representation system. So we'd have, in this region, we might have 3 representatives representing us in the Commonwealth of Regions down there in Canberra. And they might come from different parties, maybe independent, but basically they've got to work together to represent the regional interests, and it's not driven by party policy alone, one party or the other. And yeah, we vote for our regional reps in the federal government. We just go to the vote once. We'd vote for our local government, we'd vote for our regional reps, and that'd be about it. We wouldn't have to go every so often for state and federal elections. And we'd create a Commonwealth of Regions with permanent ministries run by elected industry specialists, and hopefully an Australian republic, because we can't really talk about autonomy unless you actually, self-governing yourselves as a country. So I'm very much a Republican. And that's kind of the overview. I'm sure it's got you all wondering about a few things, and I'll be happy when the time's right to answer a few questions. But that's it from me, and I'm hoping that I've provided some ideas and inspiration, and look forward to whatever comes out of it. Thank you very much. Cheers.